This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we're now in recording. So John, if you want to go ahead and take control, or you've got control, but if you want to go ahead and start, everybody, I'd ask you to either to just jot down or add into the question box or the chat box any questions that you may have. Maybe easier, and we can open up for the end. But if you put them in the question box, you can, or the chat box, we can try to get to those towards the end. So John, I'll leave this up to you.
All right, thanks, Greg. What's our time window here?
I think we scheduled this till 30 minutes past the next hour, so we now have a little more than 50 minutes. So let's go ahead and try to target 45 minutes in total to give people a chance to get to their next meetings. So let's say that would be maybe 35 minutes of presentation if possible, with 10 minutes of Q&A if necessary.
Okay, no problem. So thanks everybody for joining. I believe the purpose of this call is to talk about the new FLIR QL320, compare it to the Providence QL320. What's new? What's in the works? What's the relevant features that are coming out in the new QL? What does it mean for existing QL customers, and all things kind of related to those topics. So what you're looking at on this screen, the hastily captured picture this morning of the two tablets. So the one on the right is the Providence QL320. The one on the left is the new FLIR branded QL320. So the hardware itself has changed. The new tablet's a little bit bigger. The screen's a little bit bigger. It's a little thinner, I think, than the Panasonic. Weighs about the same. So we went to this new platform for a variety of reasons. One of the main things for the user that's going to be an advantage for this new hardware platform is the built-in SD card reader. So for customers that are going to use Q mode, are going to record their images directly on the camera and transfer them to the QL320 for processing. They'll be able to do that directly into the tablet. It does take a micro SD card. So when we ship the FLIR QL320, we ship it with a SD card, a micro SD card, and an adapter, just to get them started. There's a few other differences in the tablets, but from the user standpoint, that's probably the most significant one. So with respect to the new application, in addition to new tablet, the application itself is new. It's been completely redesigned based largely on user feedback and feedback from the FLIR sales staff, and we tried to incorporate all the feedback we got from the Providence QL320 into the FLIR QL320. I meant for this to be mostly interactive, so we'll switch to the QL320 tablet itself here in a second. But the major features that I want to cover on this call that are new for the QL320, it now has the ability to measure concentration. This was probably the most requested feature from our user community. It was a bit puzzling to us why this was so important, because it's kind of a predecessor to calculating an emission rate. But I can presume it's because of the legacy of LDAR programs, and at least in the U.S., where they're FID based, where your screening value for a leak is concentration based. So we presented this new FLIR QL320 at the 4C conference a month ago, and this feature, I could just see people's reaction on their faces. This somehow resonated with them, and they got it. So I think this is going to be an important feature moving forward. You'll see that the plume overlay isoplex is now colorized to show the concentration gradient of the plume. I mentioned the built-in SD card reader will make it easier to process those Q mode files. On the report, a single image snapshot that gives you the leak rate overlay on top of the image, and you can now add multiple masks to the measurement boundary when you're doing a mass emission rate. I'll show you how that works. And then, believe it or not, we had a lot of customers ask for a demo mode. We made this demo mode primarily for the sales staff to be able to do a conference room, be able to show archive videos in a conference room format, have it sort of mimic how it would look in the field. And a lot of customers asked to have this feature so they could have their own sort of training library for their staff. So these are the features I want to cover. Craig, can you tell which one is the QL320? I want to try to switch the screen sharing to.
Well, there is one called just directly QL320. So do you want me to try to switch screen sharing to that?
Yeah.
Make presenter. Okay, let's see if this works.
Yeah.
And it shows that the QL320 is now the presenter. There
Okay.
we go. We should be good.
So what we're looking at now is the desktop of the QL320. It's a little cluttered because this is one of our development desktops. I have a couple of versions loaded on here. But what the user would see is this FLIR icon. Actually, this icon's a little small, but they launch it using this FLIR icon on the desktop. And if my camera's still hooked up.
By the way, that icon has been fixed. Craig, we had talked about the icon A being big, and then wanting to get rid of the shortcut arrows,
Okay.
both of which have been done.
Correct. And just so the team knows, when you launch the program, it will only have that icon. There will not be all the other stuff, I believe, Johnny. It will just be the icon on the desktop plus a
Icon and the manual.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we're looking at the desktop now. I'm remoted into it, so you can think of the arrow, the mouse that you see, the mouse arrow. This is a touch screen, but you can imagine my finger is the icon, the mouse basically, and we can kind of go through some of these features. So this is live. So this is in our gas lab. This is looking at a leak that's in our under a vent in our gas lab. And the first thing you'll see, if you're familiar with the old QL320, the first thing you might notice is this has been flattened quite a bit, meaning all of the buttons are now on this single screen. There's no more menus across the top. One of the comments we got on the old one was it took several mouse clicks to get down to do different features, turn overlays on and off, that kind of thing. So every control you need right now is on this one screen. There's no hierarchy to this UI anymore. What you see here on the left is all the metadata that the user would enter to do a measurement. Plume polarity, leak type, lens, distance, temperature, what gas am I measuring, and what's the wind speed. Campaign mode and memo are just like the old QL320. Campaign mode can help you organize your data files into subfolders. Memos and notes you can add, and it will be put into your report. So if the user's starting this up, everything on the left is what they would enter for each measurement. And then down here, this is the capture button to record a measurement. So I just recorded that result. And the reset button will reset the background and reset my rolling average results. So in this mode, we have a 1 second, a 10 second, and a 1 minute rolling average. Here's my numbers. I'm gonna restart this.
Just so everybody knows that what you're seeing there, while we will not have a desktop, this is their trial version. Not have a desktop at this time. This is the, if you will, the engineering version of this with a lot of data on the inside that John and his team have. But even though this is just a standard, you'll notice this looks just like and even a similar resolution to what our new QL will look like. Go ahead, John.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so that's the metadata on the left, your results here on the right, and you'll notice we have a 1 second and 10 second. This capture button just went red. That means I've filled up my 10-second buffer. And if I capture that now, then I can hit the button when it goes red. In a few seconds here, you're going to see it's going to go green. Green means is I now am gotten a 1 minute average, and my 10-second number is within 10% of my 1 minute average. So the button will be enabled as soon as you can capture a result. It will go green as an indicator to the user that, hey, this result is within 10% of your 1 minute average. The indicator to the user that the result is stable. If you record now, you're getting a number that's representative of the longer term average. On the right here, these are, think of these as the configuration settings of the QL320. On the top here, it's a little, I'll minimize this. I can move this. Here are overlays. You can turn these on and off. If I turn them all off, here's my raw image that will basically the same as you might see in the camera. The Delta T feature shows this is the same as in the QL320. It will show you the areas of the image that are below the minimum Delta T requirement for this to apply this quantitative method. This feature, this temperature overlay screening, is been implemented in the firmware of the camera, and we expect that to be released. I don't know exactly the timing, probably within a month or so, where the user in the field can screen for temperature with the camera. So this will be very useful for Q mode. If the customer is going to use this without bringing the tablet into the field, then this temperature screening will help them ensure that they got that the image they're recording in Q mode will be able to be processed later for a quantitative result. Because what you don't want is them take a bunch of data in the field, get back to the office and find out, oh, I didn't have enough delta temperature to apply this method. And I may not be able to go out and take the data again. So I think this Delta T screen feature in the camera is going to be very important for Q mode. The next overlay is the plume itself, and this will highlight the plume, and you can see the plume overlay in the Providence QL320. It was a single color. Here, this isopleth shows the concentration gradient of the plume itself. Goes from blue to yellow, where yellow is the highest concentration, blue is the lowest concentration. And then the measurement boundary is just like in the QL320, where let me get this out of the way. Where this is on this boundary is where we're actually performing the measurement if you're measuring in a volumetric leak rate or a quantitative or a mass emission leak rate. So if you're measuring the rate of the leak, that measurement is done on this boundary. You'll see this boundary sort of changes size as you change distance and length. But when we get to the concentration measurement, you'll see that's a little bit different. So these three overlays are for the user to configure. However you have these set, when you capture a result, that's what your video is going to look like. It's going to have whatever overlays you have turned on will be in your processed video. Over here we have the units. They can choose between metric and imperial units for temperature and distance, and then leak rate units. So the new one here is ppm meter. So if I change to ppm meter, you'll see that the boundary is replaced by a box. This box can be drawn anywhere on the screen. Wherever you draw it, we will calculate the ppm meter reading for the. See, there's an issue with this. Let me start it again. All right, this is a prototype of the next release.
And while you're getting this thing up and running, actually we got it up and running. I'll say what I was saying. Go ahead, John.
So you can draw this anywhere on the screen. You drag your finger and it will give you you're basically drawing the diagonal of the box, and then we will report over here the highest ppm meter reading within the box.
John, just to confirm, drawing the box, you start from the top left and drag to the bottom right for the size of the rectangle you'd like. Is that correct?
You can do it any direction. So it
Okay.
doesn't matter. However you drag, it's going to draw the box. You're basically defining the diagonal of the box.
Okay, thank you.
So, and they can draw it anywhere on the screen, and they can also capture this result, and we'll report the ppm meter reading. Across the top of the QL3, I'll put it back to a leak rate. Turn my boundary back on. Across the top here, let me do this again. You'll see some buttons related to the mask. And by default, we usually leave the mask feature off, but if you turn it on, now you're allowed to draw a mask around the image, and it will allow you to wherever I press on the image, the way the masking feature works is you go counterclockwise around the ring. The first place, let me remove that. The first place you click will start the mask, and the second place you click will end it. So I just deleted the segment by clicking here or touching here and here. The new feature here is that you can now add a second mask. So if you have a complex background and you need to segment this boundary and put multiple masks, you can come up here with this mask entered. If I click somewhere else to put a different mask, I'm going to replace the one I just entered. But if I wanted to actually have two masks, then I click this button here, add a mask. That one's been stored, and now I can come in and add a second one. You can add as many as you want. If I want to remove the last one, that's what this button here, remove last mask, and you can iteratively remove the mask that you just added. So it's a little bit clunky. We might find a better way to implement this, but it is something that's been asked for from the users quite a bit, is ability to be more custom on this ring. And the reason you would do that is if there's something in the scene, like here we have this low delta T region here. It's not really affecting our results so much, but if you have things moving in the scene or things that are not that are causing interference and interfering with our plume extraction, this gives you a way to be very specific about segmenting this boundary and making sure it doesn't touch anything in the scene that is changing that's not related to the plume. Let's see, one other thing. Let me do this again. See if I find So anything you save on the QL320 will be put into the C:archive folder. The report is something that's changed here. Let's see if I find the one I just took, which is this one. So you see, similar to the Providence QL320, you get 4 files when you do the capture. This is the overlay file that whatever overlays you had turned on will appear in this image here. This report has been cleaned up a little, reduced to 1 page. You get the single result, and you get an overlay image that gives you the leak rate and an image of the leak with whatever boundary, whatever overlays you had turned on. So the report's been condensed down to a single page. That was another comment we had from feedback on the Providence QL320. Just see. One thing that's gone from the previous QL320 is the Providence QL320 had different operating modes. There was a batch mode and a continuous mode. The batch mode has basically been removed. It's sort of antiquated. The continuous mode is basically what you see here. As soon as you start up the application, you'll start getting your results streamed to the image. Let's see if I've covered it. Last thing I guess to cover is these file buttons here. So load, this is how you would load a file that you had already captured. I'll load the one that we just captured this morning. And it will play back that image that you just captured and give you the result. It affords you the opportunity then to change any of the metadata that you had entered, rerun it. This is also how you would run a sequence file from QMode using this load feature.
John, can you explain a little bit about if you were to open a loaded or a previously recorded QL file, rerun it, and then hit capture? Can you explain what happens there?
Rerun it and then hit
capture. That just overwrites any previous savings that you would have. So if I were to open this and change some parameters per se, the QL data and videos that are in that one file continually get updated. Is that correct, or does it save new files?
It will overwrite so let's do that. So I just loaded that file again.
I just want everybody to understand that if you do change parameters, they're all in this, if you will, this is your radiometric IR image. And every time that you hit capture, it's like hitting save, and you overwrite the previous spots on your radiometric infrared image. You're overwriting the previous data on your QL320 file, including the video and the video, raw video, and the boundary videos. So just want to make sure everybody's completely up to speed on that.
So one addition to that, I mean, every time you capture, so if you're looking at a streaming video, every time you capture, you're getting a new saving, a new set of data saved. But I think what you're describing, Craig, is if I rerun, like I captured one, I just loaded it back and reran it, I'm going to get the same result that I got when I captured it. But then let's say, for example, when I captured it, I thought it was propane. Yes. Actually, it's methane. So I can change it to methane, hit rerun. The same radiometric data is going to be now processed as if it's propane instead of methane. Right. Now I'll get a different result.
Methane instead of propane.
Yes, methane instead of propane, sorry.
Correct. Okay, just making sure everybody understands that.
And when you do that, it will overwrite the results file. So that PDF file that
Yeah, the recording file, all 4 of those files will be overwritten. I'm just letting everybody know if you liked a previous video or the previous data, it will be overwritten. It's not going to save as and create a new file. It is going to overwrite what is previously in there, just giving everybody the heads up.
Yeah, what it'll look like, it'll show you the original settings that you captured the data with, and then the new settings. In this case, we changed propane to methane, and you can see instead of 6.6 liters a minute, if this is actually methane, it would be 1.6 liters a minute.
Okay, and can you confirm that when you have a Q mode recording that may have propane, but you change it to methane, does this also show original as to what was recorded in Q mode, or original as to the first time you saved it in this file?
I believe it's all going to do the same thing. It's going to show the difference between original and what your original settings were and what you just ran with. The one difference is we don't have, in this case, since I changed this, that change is going to follow that data file, that .dat file around. And if someone else loads it later, it's still going to say methane. It'll still remember that it was originally propane, and if I ever want to undo it, that's this button that just showed up here.
Okay.
If I click undo, it'll change this back to propane.
Yeah, and can you go back? Yeah, that undo button is new to this version.
I think maybe it made it onto the very last version of the Providence QL320, but it's probably new for most people. Okay. And it's just telling you that you changed some of your metadata. If you want to undo that change, it'll let you undo it. That feature doesn't work with the Q mode files. If you can change any of this, but we won't remember it. Okay. So we don't go into the sequence file and change it like we do our .dat file.
Thank you. I think a lot of people on this call, we are all FLIR sales employees. I think the demo mode feature is going to be of considerable interest to them. I'd like to go in, show the demo mode files, talk to them about any limitations that you would have in demo mode versus in the live mode like you have, and maybe even go over some of the previous new features that people may be unfamiliar with, like auto plume versus manual sensitivity, just to show them in actual video files like this, maybe the masking feature and how you can use this if this were more of a real file. So if you want to go over that a little bit.
Okay, so I just enabled demo mode. In this version here, one note is once you enable demo mode, there's no way to really get out of it. You have to restart the app, but we'll fix that going forward where you can just get out of demo mode and you'll go back to live. But in demo mode, it will cycle through a series of files on the hard drive. The files are located in a folder called C:*demo. You can add files to this as you choose. This is what a feature that customers ask for, but the sales staff can also use. If you have a particular file that you want to use to do demonstrations, you can drop it into this folder.
And I would ask the sales team, as you have what you feel as though are very good or excellent Q mode or even QL320 recordings, please reach out to business development or product management so that we can potentially get those loaded into future installments.
And the idea of the demo mode is it should look as close to live mode as we can. So when you're in demo mode, you can do things like if you want to experiment with the masking feature. So I can turn it on. I can apply masks in the image. Maybe so the same things you can do with the QL320 live in the field, you should be able to do in demo mode. One thing we haven't covered yet is this plume thresholding feature at the bottom. So we can look at that right now in demo mode. Right now, this plume extraction is a change-based. We're extracting the plume from the background by looking at the changes in the plume pixels, and there's a threshold applied there. Right now, the threshold is being determined automatically by the scene, the extraction algorithm is determining a threshold. But we do let the user apply their own threshold if they want. The way they would do that is go into manual mode, and now this slider bar here is now enabled, and they can basically make this extraction more sensitive or less sensitive. You can see where there's some noise pixels showing up in the background that weren't there in auto mode. So the sensitivity goes 1 to 10, where 10 is the most sensitive. So this is probably 8 is probably a little too high. That's probably the appropriate manual plume sensitivity. So of course, if you lower sensitivity too low, you're not going to get the entire plume. If you make it too high, you'll extract all the noise in the background. So it's a feature. It's probably a little used feature by the users, but generally, if you have an issue with plume extraction, it's because you have something touching the ring that is adding noise to the signal, and you can address that with a masking feature. But it is available to the user. When we do the training, we recommend use auto mode for most cases.
Thank you, John. I would add that this would be analogous to high sensitivity mode, similar to high sensitivity mode in a camera.
Yeah.
Yep.
But so in really the plume extraction method itself is the frame differencing type of extraction that's analogous to high sensitivity mode. The difference is we establish an average background and display it for the user, and then show the change over that background as the plume, and then colorize it based on its concentration profile.
Okay. Can you go to the next? Can you just show them how to get to a next file, and then can you go to the pneumatic controller video?
So this button here that used to be the reset button is now your next button. And it will allow you to cycle through the different demo files that are loaded.
And note, everybody, you cannot go back. You have to cycle through. And can you possibly, John, go to the pneumatic controller? I want to walk through the concentration over path link feature with that pneumatic controller, and have you explain that in real this one here. Explain that and maybe talk through that a little bit. I have some questions for you that may help the team. First off, you'll notice that when you first put it on there, it will just take up the center, the center probably 50% of the screen or a little less. But John, I guess with this feature, one thing I do want to state to everybody is that this number is parts per million over a meter path length. Now you can see this plume is in no way a meter in depth. So I would say that this number is not the same number you would get with a sniffer. A sniffer gets an individual molecule. If you were to estimate, if this is 100 centimeters in depth for those international people, and you were to estimate that this plume is, let's just say 10 centimeters in depth, you could multiply that number by 10, and that would be a somewhat equivalent true concentration. The challenge is we really never know truthfully or accurately the depth of a plume. John, if you want to correct me if I'm wrong in that, and then explain what is being recorded. Is it the average of the whole box as it moves from the center outside the box? Can you explain how the concentration over the path length is recorded and what data and how it's selecting that data for its number?
Yeah, so what we're displaying here is the maximum ppm, the average maximum ppm meter within the box. So in other words, the highest ppm meter reading that we measured within this box, we average it, or every second. So each frame actually, we're calculating the highest ppm meter reading in the box, and then we're calculating rolling averages of those maximums. So as Craig said, this is a pass average concentration, so ppm meter per unit meter, and we don't really know the plume depth. We've talked about possibly making that a user-defined field, where the user could then, if you're in this ppm meter mode, the user could add a user-defined
estimated plume depth.
Estimated plume depth by the user. Then you could convert this ppm meter into a ppm reading. Mm-hmm. It would be closer then to the number that you would get from from an FID, but it still wouldn't be an exact comparison, because really this is a path average concentration over the depth of the plume, and there'll be a gradient on that plume.
So in the video you have right there, it is likely actually recording the numbers from the hanging tag on the handle, the yellow on the bottom.
Yeah, this one you can see there's this is like an LDAR tag, I think, and it's moving back and forth. You'd really want to draw the box to exclude that to get a better reading. I think if I redraw this box, I may lose my rolling averages. There seems to be a bug in this one.
Yeah, if you
it's not. Oh, there
it goes.
Okay.
Yep. So I just want to highlight now, it is the numbers, if you've noticed, were over 5,000 on us 1 second average a second ago. I'd like to highlight a few things on this if you don't mind, John. This is now, whereas a minute ago, the average maximum was probably consistently that moving tag on the bottom. Now the average maximum is more than likely the true area of leak on the top right of the pneumatic controller, and it is not as it moves. Realistically, you can think of this as a hotspot finder within a box. Would that be correct, John? Just as a similar analogy.
Yeah. So it will in this mode, the way it's deployed right now, it's not aggregating this plume. It's telling you the highest concentration we found within this plume.
Correct.
And then averaging that over time.
Yes, John, thank you. And I want to highlight the image right here. There's nothing leaking on the top left. Right here, there's nothing leaking on the top right. Think about this as a demonstration tool where you could show that on this image right here, if your sniffer starts on the top left, begins to move clockwise and moves to the top right, you potentially could miss this entire plume with a sniffer. You could miss right here, you could miss this entire leak if your sniffer happened to be outside of the plume turbulence, the plume movement. But as this plume is moving from left to right within a Providence QL320 or a FLIR QL320, and within this algorithm, it is always picking up the maximum difference in concentration change in, if you will, a single pixel or pixel cluster. It is picking that up in the entire, inside that entire boundary, which means you're not losing it like you would with a sniffer. With that, just, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, but I really think as a demo tool for the FLIR sales organization, this video is key in helping explain why sniffers, TVAs, are inaccurate.
Yeah, it sort of highlights the nature of a sniffer is a point measurement.
Correct.
This is giving you a concentration reading over a large area. So the numbers, the reading that you get from this is not directly analogous to a point concentration measurement. But then I would say it's better in a lot of ways because it's giving you a more representative number of what's actually going on with you.
John, just to kind of help, one thing that is kind of unique here is that we're measuring parts per million meter and have the units feet. Can you change the units? And I guess that is a bit of a challenge. The parts per million meter is just that is the terminology in the industry. But we're getting some say, and again, we also have some international people. So yeah, to answer your question, yes. If John, maybe if you want to change this from feet to meter in units, and maybe Fahrenheit to kind of help some of the international people on the call.
I'm confused.
Well, I'm just saying we have
Like,
parts per million meter, but on your units on the right, can you just change that to meter?
yeah, yeah.
There is a question on here about the sensitivity of the 1 minute results change. Yes, you would have to leave this box consistent for 1 minute. And John, I'm just noticing your updates only, as you change this, you have to leave the box, the boundary, the units, all of the parameters consistent for 1 minute for it to re-update the 60-second or 1 minute change. And so there was a question related to that online.
Yeah, in this version, and this is very close to the version we're shipping right now. And anytime you change a mass, change the boundary, change things like distance or temperature, basically we reset everything, reset the background, reset the results, so your clock would start over. So the idea is you set everything up to do your measurement, and then you let your rolling averages build up. And of course, you can record as soon as you have a 10-second number, but the idea is you wait until you have your 1 minute number, and so you have more averaging going on. And that is one thing I wanted to cover with this group, because one of the things we are considering is changing that behavior, or possibly adding a new mode. So one of the feedback that we got was, hey, our power users who are doing a lot of measurements, they really, the expediency is what is important to them, and they want to be able to do let's see.
Let me just, while you're pulling that up, John, in essence, there are a lot of technologies that are out there, and one of those including our new SI-124 acoustic camera, where they produce a number and the industry is saying, look, this has a number, it has to be accurate. The challenge that we have seen with the transparency, accuracy, precision that we have within the QL320 potentially is that our numbers are very, very transparently accurate. They are updating continuously every 1 second, but that could present a bit of ambiguity or a bit of confusion to the industry, and potential for the industry to better understand the technology, which also means that industry that industry has an opportunity, or our industry has an opportunity to disprove, and see errors within that, because they see a continually changing number. I believe what John's talking about is we wanted to present to this team as the leaders on this call, that leaders in the optical gas imaging and oil and gas world, what if the QL320 did not have any updates? It just spit out a number. So you have a video like John's showing here, nothing happens. And then once you have a number that is ready, you simply save that. And and I think, John, ideally that number wouldn't change like it's doing now. Once
so in this,
you'll notice you had it updating after 5 seconds. I would change that to it does not update until it's ready to capture. But once you get a number, there's no changing, there's no ambiguity, there is just a single number that the user can save, and then they can hit reset or start over with this exact same thing.
Yeah, so this is along those lines. This is one implementation of that. And the way this one's implemented, whenever you start, you'll build up a 10-second buffer. The number will update as we're doing the rolling average of the 10-second, but once we fill that 10-second buffer, it stops. And the user has two options. They can record it by hitting capture, or they could make some change, which is going to reset they could anything but this number will not update again unless they reset the background, change temperature, change something about the scene. So it's more like a little more expedient. So we're thinking of either adding a mode like this or maybe changing the behavior. The idea was that showing all of the averages, the 1 second, 10 second, 1 minute average, may be more than the average user really wants. All they really want is to get a reasonable result in a reasonably short amount of time.
And I think I would ask for this team to maybe just shoot me an email and copy Diedrich if you'd like. And we can formulate some responses back to John. Is this a feature that you feel as though, there's two questions that I have. One, is this a feature you feel as though would help the acceptance of this in your region, your territory, and with your customers? And the second question is, if we were to implement a feature like this, do you feel as though we need to have some sort of icon or some sort of button or something that allows access to the full data? In other words, the 1, 5, 10, maybe an advanced mode, a professional mode, however we want to define it, a scientific mode. As an example, our partner out in the UK knows that NPL and some of these people really want the full features. So those are the two questions. Is this change something that you feel as though it would be good or bad in your market? And two, do you feel as though most customers would want or need an option to move to advanced? Anything else to add that you would like to get from the team that's on the call, John?
I would say, in addition to that, just any feedback. Some of the best feedback we get is from the sales staff, and they get to interact with the customers a lot more than we do. So any feedback you have is important for us. So we really appreciate it.
All right. Well,
I think I've cut.
Go ahead.
Craig, I think I've covered the features of the UI that I wanted to cover. The only last comments I would have is for existing QL320 customers, there's an upgrade path for them to get to this platform if they want to sort of trade in their old QL, Providence QL, and get a FLIR QL. And then and the other comment I'll make is we're not stopping here. I mean, we're working very closely to push more of this into the camera and also continue to evolve this method, make it more accessible, more easier to use for the user in a lot of different fronts. So it's not, although it's been around for a while and it's sort of incrementally improving, it's still very much an emerging technology that we're still improving as we go.
Yeah, I'll add to that, John. This relationship with Providence has spanned over generations of FLIR, starting with Mr. Sarapusco. Rob Raymer led that relationship for a while, and Mark Bicella at times. And then, I've as a BD, I've kind of taken the reins, if you will. This has just been, potentially a long overdue official relationship, strategic partnership with them. This strategic partnership we have with Providence does not stop with one solution. The strategic partnership will include solutions that some of you may be aware of, some of you may not, and many of us may not even know yet what this partnership will roll out to. So I appreciate, John, your time today in respect of everybody else's time. We have one last question, I believe. What is the average accuracy level of the ppm measurement? I think that's a tricky answer to get into when you talk about average accuracy. We have not, because this is new, we have not been able to do field studies with third parties like Concawe yet. I would point it two ways. One, I would still point to the old Concawe and state that our solution was a plus or minus of 6% standard deviation, where theirs was over 30, and theirs was over 30 while being directed to the leak. Let's keep that in mind. The Concawe study was not a blind study for sniffer and a blind study for OGI. It was a directed study for a sniffer because they use the OGI instruments to find the leak, which would not be true of a general sniffer operation in the field. But we will be working with John to try and get some more field studies, but putting a direct accuracy is going to be a bit of a challenge, because just looking at that pneumatic controller, a direct accuracy is going to be a challenge, because what are we going to measure that against? A sniffer, you know, and we are assuming a plume depth. I would say the accuracy would be 100% accurate according to our solution here, but that would be, is not something I would probably put on the paper, because it would be very challenging for somebody to do that, especially considering a path length. John, I don't know if you had anything to add there.
I would just add that we have done a lot of independent tests for the accuracy with respect to leak rate, and there's multiple ones that have been published that we can point customers to if they want to know. And generally speaking, that accuracy is in the range of about 30%. I would say the ppm meter measurement is going to be much more accurate than that, because it does not have to account for the dispersion of the plume to the boundary. So how much more accurate than that is something we've not really studied, and honestly, it would be difficult to. I don't know what control method you would use to test the accuracy of that, because like I said, it's a ppm meter measurement. So it's not something that we've really tackled with studies yet.
Yeah. All right. In the essence of time and respecting everybody's calendars, please reach out to Diedrich or myself. And John, I thank you for your time. And guys, this is just the beginning of a longstanding and future official strategic relationship with Providence. You know, we will be able to maximize the use of Providence and the implementation of their knowledge and their solutions into our technology, and hopefully in the next coming years you're going to see this more and more. So thank you, everybody, and please reach out to us if we can help.